Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I hope and trust that this video finds you in good spirits wherever you are in the world. Once again, please take very good care of yourselves during these times. My warmest regards to you, and my friends, we can beat this. So, with that, I would like very much to continue with my discussion of the Criterion Collection Laserdiscs. This time I'd like to focus my attention, if I may, on the title that comes in the Criterion Collection Laserdisc catalog at Laserdisc spine number 9. This is the film The Magnificent Ambersons. This is the 1942 film from Orson Welles. This is 88 minutes, and this is the undeniable classic masterpiece of a film that is in many ways a kind of a beautiful, almost perfect sort of encapsulation of American life, of a sort of industrial society, of the development of capitalist societies, the idea of new wealth, the idea of sort of the history of America, but also a really tight and very gripping human drama on a very intimate scale that is so, I think, universally understood by many people around the world in terms of how poignant its story is, how romantic its story is, this idea of youth and adolescence and youth and the innocence of youth, and how that gives way to a kind of cynicism as one grows older and as developments in life occur, both triumphs and tragedies. And all of this is summed up in a film that is shot impeccably with so much beauty and command and style and substance, and a real respect for the world that is created, but also a real playfulness in terms of cinematic craft. This is Orson Welles, of course, the one and only Orson Welles, who is the maestro, the artist magnifique. And here he is performing many miracles and cinematic stunts and real treats and delights, but always giving us a story that is really grounded in a sense of humanism and tragedy and emotional resonance that is very powerful, and it continues to be powerful to this day. This is the one, the only, The Magnificent Ambersons. Now, this film is, as I say, from, this is Criterion Collection Laserdisc spine number 9. And this is a film that, well, let me just talk first of all about this particular release. So this is the CAV 2-disc Laserdisc that Criterion Collection released in its very early days of the Laserdisc format and what it was trying to do with the Laserdisc. And you can tell by this silver cover, which by now, if you've seen my past Laserdisc videos, you will know that in this early section of the releases from Criterion, we have this silver cover-like format with the Criterion Collection wording running down the spine here in this early version of the wording. The logos here on the bottom portion, and then we have here adorning the center, off center. It's a screen capture or shot or still from the film, and then we have up top in this all caps font, the magnificent Ambersons. And then if we look to the side, again, pardon me for it being difficult to see on this video, but also because this particular copy that I have is old and it has some wear and tear, some significant wear and tear, but you can sort of make out the title, the Magnificent Ambersons, and then the Criterion collection running along vertically, and then the number 9 at the bottom here, indicating, of course, spine number 9. And then before we go to the back, let's just open this up to see what's in the inside here, which is really fascinating and beautiful. So here we have this. So on the left, we have original paintings, Norman Rockwell paintings of the characters and the actors that played them. And then on this side, we have a breakdown of the film chapters, but arranged according to or in accordance with the commentary track, which is also found on this particular release. Now, while we're on the subject of the commentary track, which is on this, let me now bring in something that might be known to some of you, or maybe many of you who are watching this, which is this. This is the current Blu-ray that was released by Criterion some time back at spine number 952 of the film Magnificent Ambersons, 88 minutes. Now, the commentary track, there are a couple of commentary tracks available on this Blu-ray. One of them is by Robert Carringer. Now, that Robert Carringer commentary track that you have on this Blu-ray is in fact the commentary track, that same commentary track that existed back in the day with this Laserdisc. So that Robert Carringer's commentary track is taken from the commentary track that was from this Laserdisc release, which is really great. So Robert Carringer's what's known as an 80-minute essay. They didn't call them commentary tracks back then necessarily, but it's the same concept. And if you know this Robert Carringer commentary track, you know that it's a very good one. It's very in-depth. It's very well presented. And so what we have here, therefore, let me just return to the inside here. What we have on this side is a breakdown, a chapter breakdown of the Carringer's commentary track. So if you want to go to a particular point of the commentary track, you just need to find that point as described in this chapter breakdown, and you can go right there. That's a really nice feature of these early Laserdiscs that I don't think we have in the current Blu-ray releases. You know, you get chapter breakdowns, but it's always nice to get chapter breakdowns, not just of the film, but also of the commentary tracks, so you can just go straight to that point of the commentary that you want to listen to, if you want to listen to an excerpt or so. So that's a really nice touch that this early Laserdisc had. Anyway, let's move on. So with that, we have the back here, which is, I'm sorry for the poor presentation, but on this side, we have, of course, the title and the preliminary information indicated in the top section. And then here and here, we have the essay. And this is an essay on the film itself. And this is also penned by Robert Carringer. So it goes into a little bit of the detail of production details and also certain aspects of Orson Welles, what the build-up was, or what the history was up to this film, and then certain production details about this film, and the idea also of how this film was affected and how that affects its overall impression maybe now. So this is, I think, a very good, concise write-up, and it's definitely worth checking out if you can. So that's the Robert Carringer essay. Again, Robert Carringer was the gentleman who provided the audio commentary track, or the 80-minute audio essay that exists here, and also that has been carried over to the current Criterion Blu-ray. But that's not all here, which is, of course, on this side, we have the explanatory information about the cast and crew, and also we have information about the chapter breakdowns for the film itself. Again, this is the CAV 2-disc release of the film, so we have the film breakdown and the supplements on carried over on 2 discs, so 4 sides, 2 sides per disc. So sides 1, 2, 3, and then 4. The 4th side being reserved for the other supplementary materials. Which I will get to right now. So the other supplementary materials that we have on this wonderful release, this early Laserdisc release from Criterion, are, first is we have an essay, an actual written essay, again by Robert Carringer, and this is presented with written type on slides, and then intercut with those slides are some pictures, explanatory pictures along the way. And so what you do to navigate through that essay is you press the step forward button, or you can go back if you want to go back a page, and so you just go through the pages as you're reading it. So it's like a slideshow, a manual slideshow that you can maneuver through manually and then read the essay as you're going along. Again, it's going into actually some very specific details, more detail than the back of this here, and also but it's consistent with the back essay, and also consistent with Carringer's comments in the commentary track. I should say also that there is a particular section where the specific details, the history of what happened that led to this film being edited the way it ended up being edited. There's a specific breakdown of the history of that particular period in 1941 and 1942. It's actually a list of all the events that took place during that period, with Wells and RKO and Robert Wise, etc., and all the people that were involved. And it's a really nice sort of historical explanation of the history of this period, because it's actually a very crucial period that led to this film being very significantly affected in a way that affects the film in its presentation even now, as many of you know. So to have this background presented in this very detailed way, very clearly presented in terms of a breakdown of months and years during this crucial period of 41, 42, I think is really helpful, and it really adds a lot of dimension to anyone who is looking for a further study of Magnificent Ambersons. So most of this information for anyone who's an Ambersons expert is probably known already, but it's always nice to have this sort of thing on the Laserdisc, and so that's really great. And then what we have is a couple of excerpts from an interview that Wells did later in his life for, I think it was the BBC, and these are 2 excerpts from that same interview, and he's talking about the film and the impact of the film as it was released, and then he's also talking about his views on the quote-unquote new ending to the film, and how that impacted him and how he felt about that. So they aren't very long excerpts, but again, they're from Orson Welles himself later on in his life, of course, but again, that provides a very important context, again, from the artist himself, and so that's very good to have. Next, what we have is again on these slides, which have text on them, so you can scroll through them or navigate through them with the step forward buttons and step backwards buttons. What we have is excerpts, written out excerpts from the release script of the Magnificent Ambersons. And so what we have are the release script excerpts of the ending of the film, again in script form, which you can scroll through, navigate through with the step buttons. And then we also have missing scenes, and these missing scenes excerpts are also accompanied mostly by stills and pictures of those scenes, as described by this this excerpt section. And where those weren't available, there are storyboards that accompany these particular missing scenes excerpts. And so once again, these are the release script excerpts that describe the ending and these missing scenes, and so with photos were applicable. So this is very, very interesting stuff. Again, adding further dimension and detail to the very complex background to this film. And so to have this available in this particular feature, I think is very, very great. I mean, to have this available back when this Laserdisc was released back in '86, I think. It's just I'm just amazed by that. So which it's really wonderful to know that it was there. But that is not all, because what we have next is we have a section which presents what purports to be the complete storyboards, which are based on the first draft of the script. And what you have is yet another section where you can scroll through or navigate through with the step forward and back button, and you just press and it goes to the next slide, and the slides being the storyboards, again based on the first draft of the script. What is great about the storyboard section is that the Laserdisc also had included this little leaflet inside, and so this is part of the package, and this is Magnificent Ambersons, directed by Orson Welles, from the novel by Booth Tarkington. Captions for the complete storyboards in sequence. So what you have is you have the Laserdisc, which has this the original storyboards with a sort of a photo gallery slideshow like presentation. So you just press the forward button to go to the next slide, the next slide, the next slide to see the storyboards. But that's just the picture, and you have a little description that's indicated at the bottom of each screen, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult to read. So if you need any assistance, you can just open up this separate leaflet and you can see a description of all of the storyboards, and this is based on the storyboard number and the frame number that you can find on the Laserdisc when you're playing it. And this is amazing. As you can see, it goes into much detail about all of the storyboards that are featured here. Amazing stuff. So if you want to go to a specific storyboard, all you need to do is refer to this little leaflet or booklet which has the descriptions, and you can skip right to that particular storyboard in this section of the Laserdisc, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. So this is really wonderful. If any of you are Laserdisc collectors and you are trying to find the Magnificent Ambersons from the Criterion Collection, the CAV release, my suggestion is if you can, see if you can confirm whenever you're looking to purchase a copy, if you find it online or from a seller, see if you can confirm if the copy has this included, because I've noticed that sometimes this is included and sometimes it's not. So just if you're interested, be sure it's included, because this is actually very, very useful tool to have. So again, that accompanies the storyboard section of this particular set of supplements. So that's the supplements section. Or sorry, the storyboard section in the supplements. And then what we have next is a script. We have, again, in a slideshow presentation format, we have the script. And this is purported to be, or it's described as being the final script version, which is taken from the script that is housed in the Mercury Theater archives at Lilly Library in Bloomington, Indiana. And it's described as incorporating all the changes made up to the start of shooting. And so this is the complete script at that particular stage. And so this is another indication where you can go forward, scroll forward with the forward button or backwards button, and read the entire script at that particular stage. Again, it's fascinating stuff to read. That kind of information is very important for anyone who is seeking a deeper dive into the myth and legend that is the making of the Magnificent Ambersons. And so to have at least this version of the shooting script, it's sort of an uncut shooting script, as it were, is very fascinating and very interesting. So that's also, I think, a very valuable tool, again, to help to further provide context and basis for the making of this film. A very complex and fascinating history, and so the shooting script is there. But that is not all, my friends, because then what we have after that is we have a section, again this is a sort of scroll through slideshow presentation, which is the publication history. So this is a little section that's detailing somewhat the publication history of the Booth-Tarkington story. And so what we have here is some shots or some photos of the story as it was first published in the magazine called Metropolitan Magazine from and it was serialized from December 1917 to September 1918. I hope we got, yes, December 1917 to September 1918. And we have the illustrations in that serialization, or illustrations being by Arthur William Brown. And then later it was published by Doubleday in 1918. But what's interesting about this Criterion supplement is that it has some shots of some of the illustrations that were in the serialized version, so you can actually scroll and see. It's not all of those illustrations, my understanding is, but it's some of them only, but still some is better than nothing at all. And in fact, there's one particular illustration that is of a scene from the novel that wasn't used by Orson Welles in his film version. That's, again, very interesting stuff to watch. So that's the publication history supplement. But that's not all, because we also have excerpts from the 1925 silent film Pampered Youth, which is also a film version of the Booth-Tarkington story. And going back to the Criterion Blu-ray for a second. So for those of you who have the Blu-ray, you will know that one of the supplements on this Blu-ray is in fact Pampered Youth. And it's in a version which is given the title 2:1, which was a version that was released in the early 30s, and it was so apparently what happened was that this was a film that was originally 70 minutes, but then it was also then condensed to 30 minutes. And my understanding is that the version that you can find here is about 30 minutes, 2 for 1. So if you are interested in what this Laserdisc had to offer in terms of Pampered Youth, it's more or less the same. So you're getting the same film that was also supplement to this earlier Criterion Laserdisc release. Pampered Youth is the supplement here. I should say, though, that the presentation of Pampered Youth on this particular Laserdisc is slightly different than the later Blu-ray. So as I say, the later Blu-ray has the film version under the title 2:1, whereas that is not included in the excerpts that are shown as part of this particular supplement. This supplement, I should say also, or the Laserdisc indicates the presentation as being excerpts from Pampered Youth only, so it's not purporting to be the entire 30-minute condensed version. So it's just excerpts from the film, and in fact you can tell that certain parts, for instance, the Amberson ball sequence, it's just a condensed excerpt shown here, but in the Blu-ray you actually get much more of what happens at that particular ball during that sequence. Also, for instance, there's a moment at the very end of Pampered Youth, what's shown on the disc here, whereas that's a little bit cut off, whereas on the Blu-ray version that you actually get a little bit more of an extension of the ending for, I think, about another maybe 20 or 30 seconds more of the actual ending. So you get the ending sequence, but you get a little more of what happens at the end of that ending sequence on the Blu-ray version rather than on the Laserdisc version. So you are getting excerpts only of Pampered Youth with the Laserdisc, but still the essence is pretty much the same as what we later get with the Blu-ray. And so and also we're getting something that was quite remarkable back in the day, this Laserdisc. So that is what the Laserdisc has to offer in terms of Pampered Youth, the 1925 silent film. But that's not all, because we also get the Mercury Theatre radio version from 1939, starring Orson Welles. And this is the radio version, the Mercury Theatre radio version. This is an interesting thing because the radio version actually plays over. It's not in one section, but actually plays over as audio in different parts of the disc. And so what you do is you have to actually find certain parts of the there's a menu that you can find in the supplement section, and it gives you where you should start the audio, and it's sort of spread out over different parts of the sides, and so it's a little bit hard to navigate if you're not used to that sort of thing, but it was still a remarkable thing to have as far as a supplement. You know, the Mercury Theatre radio production. This is a Campbell Playhouse, according to the materials found in the disc. This was from October 29th, 1939. Interestingly enough, there are also photos that you can see on the supplement section here accompanying this particular part. Those photos, though, according to what's found on this Laserdisc, again, I'm not an expert in this, but according to the Laserdisc anyway, no known photos of the rehearsals of that particular performance of the Magnificent Ambersons are known to exist, at least at the time of this particular Laserdisc. So the photos that are used for rehearsals accompanying the radio play are in fact for Treasure Island, so that's an interesting little detail. But you still see Orson Welles in the rehearsal photo, so that gives the impression, or just the impression of the radio rehearsal. And so I think that's the impression that's very important. So an interesting detail nonetheless. But that is another supplement that you get with this release, which is the radio show from 1939, the radio play of the Magnificent Ambersons, Mercury Theatre. And then last but not least, you get a bibliography, which is a list of recommended books on Welles and on the Magnificent Ambersons. This bibliography is current as of 1986, but still is very nice to have. And then at the end, you have credits for the production of this particular Laserdisc, or video disc as they called it at the time. So this is the Magnificent Ambersons first printing. This happens to be, yes, first printing from 1986. So this is the Magnificent Ambersons. I should say also, before I continue, I forgot one thing. I should say also that included in this particular copy that I have is this breakdown of the storyboards that I mentioned earlier, but also we get this interesting little technical specifications letter. Now, as you may know, Criterion, in its Laserdisc days, released these specification or technical specification letters with their Laserdiscs to indicate some kind of special or specific information that Criterion felt it necessary to convey to its customers. For purposes of the Magnificent Ambersons, this is very fascinating. This has it says some important notes about the Criterion Collection edition of the Magnificent Ambersons. And it says, filmed virtually entirely in dark and shade. That is how the reviewer for Variety in 1942 described the interior scenes of the film. This video disc edition has been mastered from original nitrate material. To see the film as audiences would originally have seen it in all its richness of tones, we suggest that you turn the color controls on your monitor all the way down and use the following reference point to adjust the brightness. In one of the opening shots, after the string of lanterns on the house goes dark and just before Eugene appears with his bass viol, when a single street lamp is the sole source of illumination for the scene, you should be able to barely but clearly make out the upper portion of the second story of the house standing out from the surrounding darkness. In general, set the brightness controls high enough to bring out as much of the rich detail in the film as possible, but not so high that you begin to wash out the more subtly shaded areas. This is so interesting because what this is saying, my friends, is this is saying you should go to a particular shot of the film that is described in this paragraph of the letter and freeze it. And then from that, you should use that as a reference point and adjust the brightness on your TV set in such a way as to describe it so it turns out the way that it's described in this particular letter. And that is how Criterion at this time was telling people or recommending to people how to adjust the brightness on their TV sets so as to get the most out of the presentation of the magnificent Ambersons from the Criterion collection. This is fascinating stuff. This is something that I rarely ever see in any current Blu-ray or DVD release. I think the only time I've ever seen it, for instance, is maybe a release, DVD release from David Lynch, for example, for Eraserhead. But this is the sort of stuff that I think is really quite valuable, again, because this film is very much, it depends so much on the shadows and the darkness and the light. And so to have this as a reference is really quite helpful, and I wish that current releases could do more of this, because this would really help out me in terms of how I should optimize my viewing of these many films, and maybe my TV and the adjustments are off, and so I should also consider that as a possibility of optimizing my own viewing experience. Well, this letter with this particular Laserdisc identifies that particular issue very, very well, and it's such a quaint yet so charming and rich little detail that Criterion was giving us way back in the day. This is something that I really love about Criterion Laserdiscs, is this kind of detail and care and attention to the viewing experience at home. Again, this is the letter that is included with this particular Laserdisc release. But my friends, let me continue with other releases of this particular film by the Criterion Collection, because this is not the only time that this film has been released by the Criterion Collection on Laserdisc. We also have this on this particular release here. And so what you have here is the same film, and the presentation is the same. The contents are the same. This is the 2-disc CAV release, and this is purported to be the second printing from 1989. And so what we have is we have a slightly different picture on the front cover than what we had on the earlier purported to be the first printing of this particular Laserdisc, but that's okay. And so we have this, and then on the side here we have spine number 9, and then the title and Criterion Collection, and then we have up top here the black bar, which I think many of us who know the early DVDs of the Criterion Collection can recognize. And then we have the back with the same Carringer essay and then description on this side in terms of the cast, the crew, and also the chapter breakdown. And then we open it up, and we can see that, excuse me here, we can see also that we have the presentation inside as such. It's a slightly different presentation than what we had on the earlier first printing silver cover edition Laserdisc, but still this is very, very good, very nice indeed. And indeed also we have the Robert Carringer commentary chapter breakdown as such here. So this is really, really wonderful. I should point out that this particular release also has, this particular release also has a letter. It's in a slightly different font, but this is also the technical specifications letter that is suggesting that viewers go to a particular scene, that particular scene, and adjust the brightness based off of this description in this particular letter. And also, I should say that there is the little booklet here, which is the guide to the Storyboard supplement. And so the print is a little bit different, as you can tell. This is the second printing version, and this is the earlier first printing version. So as you can tell, there's a little bit of a font change, but the contents, as far as I am aware, I've done a very brief cursory check, but I think they're pretty much the same. I really should check it more carefully, but I've done it quite quickly, and based on that quick check, they look pretty much the same in content. So there is this particular release from Criterion Collection, again, spine number 9. I should point out another detail, which is this actually was a disc that was gifted to me through other means, and so I don't usually do this, but I actually have a second copy of this this particular release of this. So this is the same copy here, but it's actually slightly different. This one that I have in my hands doesn't have a barcode, whereas this does. And so this one that I have in my hands is indicated as being manufactured by 3M, whereas this one doesn't indicate any person or any company having manufactured it. So that's very interesting. There's also the difference of the Voyager company address on this one that I have with the barcode having the address being in New York, whereas here the copy that I have without the barcode indicates the address being in Santa Monica, California. And so this is a little detail that I should bring up now. I might have mentioned it in other Laserdisc videos, but one of the issues with Laserdisc collecting is that there are many possible permutations and slight differences. It's very tough to keep track as to exactly every single permutation and every single iteration and version of a particular release. And so one could look at these two and consider them the same, or if you are very specific, you can look at them and say that they are in fact different versions of the same release. And so it really depends on what your level of collecting is and what your resources are, because if you are really looking for all the little different versions of each title, depending on the title, it can take quite a bit of time and quite a bit of money to try to find everything. So I was actually very fortunate to be able to get the second version quite in happenstance. But this is just an example of an issue in Laserdiscs where you can have slightly different versions, barcode, no barcode, maybe different manufacturers of the discs themselves and the like. And so it really depends on what your level of collection is and what your needs are and what your own hopes are for your own collecting. But in any event, my friends, if you are looking for this particular version of Magnificent Ambersons, I would suggest, however, that you try to find a version that has the letter and also the Storyboards booklet. I should point out that I have two of these, and one of them did not have the Storyboards booklet. And so just keep that in mind when you are looking for the Magnificent Ambersons Laserdisc, if you are looking for it. So if you are looking for it, I would strongly recommend that you make sure that the Storyboards booklet is included, because that's a really key component. Okay, so that's it, except that is not it, because we have yet another release from the Criterion collection of this particular film on Laserdisc. This time we have it on a single disc CLV release, which is right here. And as you can see, the design of the front cover is very different than what we've seen before. It's this sort of flowery motif, and we have the still that was of course the same one that was used on the second printing, what we saw just now. The font is a little bit different, but this is also a single disc, so it's not it doesn't have all the features that we saw before in the earlier CAV releases, but we do have the Robert Carringer audio commentary track, which is an option that you can listen to. And it's in fact described here as being an audio commentary, which is an interesting little detail. Again, if you recall, in the earlier CAV release here, it was referred to as an 80-minute essay. And I didn't mention it, but let me just say here that for this particular CAV release, it was called an audio essay. Here it's called an audio commentary. So now we get the actual nomenclature, or the actual language that is now commonly used to refer to the audio commentary track. Well, we get it here as well. So that is really great. And then, I'm sorry, before I forget, we also have on the back here information. We have the essay, and we have information about the cast and crew, like so. But this is the single disc release CLV. You can get also indications of the black bar of the Criterion Collection logo used at the top here. And on the side, we have Magnificent Ambersons Criterion Collection and 9A. This is spine number 9A. So as you know, or some of you may know already, the CAV special 2-disc releases have spine number 9, but the single disc CLV release is indicated with 9A, and that's a capital A, so 9A. So that's a little bit of a distinction that Criterion is now making between its CAV releases and its CLV releases where applicable. And so we will see this kind of spine number usage. We've seen it a little bit already, but we will see it. We saw it, for instance, with Invasion of the Body Snatchers, etc. But we will see this kind of usage of spine numbers and the capital A going forward with other Laserdisc releases where applicable. So just keep an eye out for that. It's another interesting little detail with Laserdiscs and Criterion and spine numbering in the system. It also is a potential source of confusion in some aspects, but hopefully if I can continue with this particular series of Criterion Collection Laserdiscs, then I can try to identify those as we go along. But in any event, for now and for the Magnificent Ambersons, what we have here is spine number 9A. Okay, my friends, so that's it for the Magnificent Ambersons on Criterion Collection Laserdisc. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will try to keep this particular journey going. So we will try to go through the spine number or the Criterion Collection Laserdiscs one title at a time in case you're interested. Once again, the Criterion Collection Laserdiscs form a great source of history of what is now the current Criterion Collection. It is a fascinating history. It is one that is filled with a lot of confusion and a lot of unknown things. There's certain issues in terms of spine number cataloging, which we will get to when we get to them, and the like. So there are a lot of confusing things about the Criterion Collection Laserdiscs, but that is one aspect of why I think they're fascinating. The other aspects being that they also form so much of the backbone of what we now know to be releases of physical media, audio commentaries, widescreen, other features that we see, and many features that we saw on these earlier releases in Laserdisc. You know, some of them we can see on current releases on Blu-ray, but others we don't. So sometimes it's really nice to have Blu-rays, of course, and Blu-rays have a great presentation, and they have a great wealth of information, and they collect and gather the materials very well, and have these really great and professional documentaries and interviews and such. But what's so wonderful about the Laserdiscs is there is this sense of, especially the good ones, there is a sense of them being a real source of a jumping off point for a further sort of academic study of these particular films and these particular materials. And the essays that are included are very in-depth and in detail, and oftentimes they include details that aren't included or aren't referred to necessarily in later releases. And so as good as these later releases are, don't get me wrong, these are really great, but there are some details that are revealed in the Laserdiscs that aren't necessarily referred to directly in this particular Blu-ray, and I find this to be quite fascinating indeed. That was also an example, for instance, with the earlier Laserdisc of Citizen Kane, spine number 1, Citizen Kane. I know that's not on Criterion, but it is on Blu-ray from other labels, for example. And I should say that as good as those Blu-rays are, and they are really, really good, there are some details that are revealed in the Criterion Collection release of Citizen Kane on Laserdisc that aren't revealed in those particular Blu-ray release supplements. And so this is an example of why I think Laserdiscs are so worth it. Of course, they are an outdated form of sort of physical media, of course, and so they are perhaps only for the collector now, but there is something of a real power to them in terms of the real potential that they have and they had and still have for a real in-depth exploration of these films on a very academic level on the one hand, but also very easy to access and easy to understand academic level, with room for further exploration, bibliographies and the such, if one is interested. So that is in a nutshell why I really think that the Laserdiscs are very fascinating and interesting to explore, watch and study. So for anyone who is interested in Laserdiscs and the Criterion Laserdiscs, that makes me very happy. And so please, in any event, my friends, if you have any comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. So thank you very much for your time, and until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please continue to watch a lot of great movies. Take good care of yourselves, my friends. Be well, stay safe, and cheers.